Hello, welcome to Staring at the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach, and with me, as always, is Matt Brandenburg.
I just have to say, this river is beautiful.
Are the waters rising yet, or is it still chill?
Oh, it's still totally chill. I think I'm just going to dive right in and just check it out. I'm sure it'll be fine.
We'll go for a swim. And concerned for Matt's safety is a Vietnamese mist.
No, I'm too tired. I'm just going to go sleep in the mausoleum right over there.
It's so nice and cold.
It's nice and chilly there, man.
A very nice place to take a nap.
I mean, I grew up next to a cemetery, so yeah, I would probably be right at home.
And today's story we are discussing Into the River by Clara Madrigano. I might have pronounced her last name wrong, and I apologize if I did. It can be read online at thedarkmagazine.com.
Yeah.
A resource we've used many a time for this podcast.
Yes.
They don't sponsor us, by the way.
Yeah, they could if they wanted to. We accept it. But we are not sponsored by them now. They are a really great website, though. We do recommend checking their stuff out.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, like, especially if you're like, I want to read something short, you could always go and check out The Dark.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if you're looking for new writers or interesting writers or just a new to you writer, usually half the time I'm like, I never heard of this person before. Let me go check this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not saying like in the bad way. I'm just like, it's always interesting. I'm finding new and unique voices from this magazine.
Well, and it's interesting for this one too. I think she's only had, like, at least according to the bio on The Dark, this was like the only thing, right? I don't know if she's had much else published.
It says you can find.
I guess she did in a couple magazines.
Worlds, The Dark, Nightmare, and she's a Clarion West alumni.
So there you go. It is still pretty cool. Somebody we never heard of before. Kind of a newer.
Yeah, this was a very interesting story.
Yeah, it was definitely it was interesting.
it deals a lot with the sins of the past and a very part of history people try to forget.
Yeah,
that brings itself back up.
Well, in this case, it's more like sweep under the rug.
Yeah. It's more, we don't talk about that here anymore.
If you don't talk about it, it never existed.
Exactly. And you know what? If it never existed, it means it can happen again.
Yeah, right.
And that's why we talk about these things.
Exactly.
But before we talk about these events, we like to go over some recommendations from this last week. And I'm going to start by recommending one of the best horror movies I've seen in a while.
Uh-oh.
Bones and
That's
All.
A bold statement.
I watched Bones and All the other day. Have you guys seen this one or heard of this one?
Nope.
No.
So it's directed by the guy who directed the Suspiria remake.
Oh, okay.
He also directed Call Me by Your Name.
Okay, I didn't see that.
And it stars Timothée Chalamet.
Wow.
And I forget the actress. And it's about cannibalism and cannibals.
Okay.
It's about this girl who, when she was a child, when she was born, she just had this insatiable urge to eat people. And no matter what she does, she can't keep it down forever. She always ends up succumbing.
So what she eats, she can't keep down, so she vomits a lot, or she can't keep the urge?
Like, she can't keep down the urge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she can't keep down the urge to eat people. Like, she can go for a little bit, and then once in a while the urge comes up and she has to satisfy it.
Wait, I feel like we had a guest on that. I don't know if they talked about this story or movie, but they talked about something similar.
Maybe.
Because I remember the question being like, how did she discover this urge?
I mean, it was always part of her.
Yeah,
like, literally one of the opening scenes in the movie is she goes to a friend's sleepover party and they're painting their nails and her friend puts her fingers in her mouth and you see her try to put her head away and then she just shoves a finger in her mouth and bites down hard.
As one does. I mean, who wants to have a finger in their mouth?
Oh no, she starts peeling the skin off with her teeth. Like, she grinds her teeth back. And one day when she wakes up, her father's gone and leaves her a cassette tape explaining to her that he had been taking care of her and trying to like satisfy her urges and be a father to her, and he realized he never could, and she's suffering from the same conditions that her mother suffered from, and her mother's not in the picture anymore. And the father just said he's going off for his own benefit, and she has to find her own way through the world.
Oh yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's like if you were like I don't know, a hamburger trying to raise somebody that likes hamburgers, eventually you're gonna be like, I gotta get out of here.
So then one of her first sights on the street, she meets a man played by Mark Rylance, who is so fucking creepy in this movie. Mark Rylance is so fucking creepy in this movie. And he teaches her how to hunt and how to feed.
So he eats people too?
Yes, because he has the same urges she has.
Does everyone have the same
He actually can
urges?
smell her and detect her from her scent. In the world of the movie, there are people who are born with this cannibalistic urges. They're called feeders.
Oh,
so
okay.
She's not the only one. There's others that are like her.
Okay, that explains a lot more than just like regular world stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he eventually creeps her out, so she leaves. And as she's still surviving, she meets a man about her age, played by Timothée Chalamet, who also has the same urges she has. And they begin to spend time together. They begin a relationship together, and the movie kind of follows their relationship as they're traveling from place to place.
Is the plot twist gonna be like they end up eating each other, like as the ultimate form of love?
There's no plot twist, but that is a metaphor at the end, but it's not really a plot twist.
Okay.
Spoiler for the ending, so fast forward 30 seconds. The creepy Mark Rylance character comes back at the end and tries to rape our main character.
Oh, jeez.
Then Timothée Chalamet comes back. He puts a bag over Mark Rylance's character's head, and then Mark Rylance's character starts stabbing wildly and stabs Timothée Chalamet's character in the chest. Then he dies, and they realize that Timothée Chalamet's lung is punctured, and she wants to get him to a hospital, but he's too consumed with his past, thinking that he's a bad person and he deserves to die. So he tells her to eat him, bones and all.
Okay.
And then eventually she succumbs to him requesting it, and she eats him, bones and all. And it ends with her going off on her own.
Can they eat normal food in between these
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
They can eat normal food between these urges. But it is a really good movie. It's more creepy than it is scary. And there's a big kind of romance bend to it because it is the same guy who did Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
And he does love using Timothée Chalamet. But like Timothée Chalamet is great in this movie. And he can be hit or miss for me, but he did a great job in this movie. Everyone in this movie is great. And it's a really good look at like the Midwest, especially like 1980s era Midwest America. Because they're traveling through the Midwest as they're doing everything. It's on Prime. It's also on MGM Plus. It's definitely worth a watch.
I need to be in a right headspace to explore cannibalism.
I will say most of the cannibalism happens off screen.
Okay, good.
There's a couple scenes that happen on screen, but most of it happens off screen. It's actually not that gory, or it's actually not that gory or bloody for a movie about cannibalism. It's more kind of about the relationship building between the two characters and the multiple layers of the cannibalism metaphor that's being used. Because you kind of look like the metaphor could be a metaphor for addiction. It could also be a metaphor for just like compulsions that we have that we eventually have to satisfy. It could be a metaphor for many, many, many different things. The movie kind of plays with many different ideas. It doesn't really settle on what it's a metaphor for and just kind of leaves it to us to kind of connect the dots. I think I sounded too smart describing that.
No, no, that was good. That was a good deep description. I appreciated it.
But no, it's really good. I also watched Horror in the High Desert.
I don't know
which
this
is
at
a
all.
fake documentary on Prime about a hiker that went missing in the desert. And it's people interviewing with his actual camera footage and his weird experiences on this camera footage. They're leading people to believe he didn't just vanish, but someone or something took him.
Nice.
And if you like fake documentary found footage movies, I'd recommend it. If you don't like fake documentary found footage movies, this will not win you over. But I think it was an enjoyable movie. I had a good time with it. And then real quick, we talked about this before we recorded, but I read Volume 14 by Blood on the Tracks, and this still has to be one of the most disturbing horror stories I've ever read in my life. I know, Vitlama, you're further than me. I know you read the scans online, so I'm pretty sure it only gets worse.
Well,
or weirder.
It gets weirder, but it actually also becomes a little bit sympathetic because you actually go into the point of view of the mother.
And you see like the mother's childhood and stuff?
Yes.
Interesting. This one ends with the mother got kicked out of her apartment for not paying rent and got back into his life, and he agreed to pay the landlord the money to get his mom back in the apartment, and now he's like having this big mental spiral about how his mom's back in his life and controlling him, and
so as you go on like this, you will get a good insight into her life, and I can't say that you sympathize with her, but at the same time you get clarification about why she is who she is.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously suffering from some sort of mental illness.
Yeah. This is there's this whole family is built upon trauma, except for the father, because the father is clueless in this. He's like, what? I have no idea what's happening, which is so typical of a Japanese family, because he's always like the father is always up there working till 10, 11 p.m. every day.
Well, the mother's poking dead cats with sticks while her child watches.
Yes.
It's totally normal.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's a really good insight about like how dysfunctional Japanese families can become, especially in this culture. So I'm like, this is fucked up, but this is good.
I also picked up the first 2 volumes of Boys Abyss, and I read volume 1. Which, have you heard of this one, Vitlame?
No, I have not.
It's super dark. It's just about this small town and this kid Reiji who lives in this kind of small town. His dad's not in the picture. His mom is just so burnt out with everything. His grandma has dementia. His brother's in hikikomori with rage issues. And you know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
And he just is tired of his mundane life. And one day, and also I will say his former best friend is that was bully and forces him to do things for him. And so one day he meets this woman who's actually a pop idol hiding out in the small town. And they're looking over a bridge, and she looks at him and she just says, "We should make a suicide pact together."
As one does.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
The manga just kind of follows him and his deteriorating mental health as the situations around him get worse and darker. Because Japanese people write the most happy stories.
Yeah, I seriously just cannot stress this enough. Therapy should be available to every Japanese people in Japan.
Yeah, no, it really should be.
They really should be like, stop stigmatizing mental health, for fuck's sake. And stop burying the fucking problem. Like the hikikomori case in particular is a really growing problem there, and they don't know how to deal with it because they're like, does this consider we have to talk to the people, or does this mean we have to change our culture? Like, yes, you kind of have to. We want a functioning society.
Yeah. Like, honestly, the whole hikikomori thing could be solved with like medication, therapy, like actually like embracing these things.
It's
And
not.
they won't.
It's not only that. It has to start at the very beginning. It has to
Oh, yeah.
start at the work environment. The work environment is what is actually killing this.
Oh yeah, no, the work environment in Japan is awful. Like it's honestly
so bad.
I remember when I was in college and I visited Japan. I know you lived in Japan for a bit, LeMay.
Yeah.
And I just remember like going out to a club with some friends and going back to our hotel at like 4 a.m. and just watching a bunch of drunk salarymen get off the train.
Because they were
Like,
obligated,
because
because
they
they couldn't say no. They had
Exactly.
to go and party with the rest of the coworkers, with
And
their
then they
boss,
have to-
because if they didn't, they wouldn't be considered part of the team.
Yep, and then they have to go and get 2 hours of sleep and go to work the next morning a couple
Yep.
hours later
Yep.
and get a whole work day in after that.
Yep.
Well, they're also working about 150 hours of unpaid overtime.
Yep.
Japan is one of the most toxic work environments like ever.
Yeah, it is.
It is so bad.
It's so fucking bad. We could have like an entire episode just talking about this, and Matt be like clueless and be like, yeah, I'll provide a little bit of like weak chuckling and be like,
just
I bet there's a
moderate.
bunch of really great untranslated Japanese workplace horror stories though.
I mean, I wrote one, so yeah, hopefully people will enjoy that.
Also, the last thing is, yesterday I also purchased Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle.
Ooh.
And of course, I had to read it right away because I've been looking forward to this book for a while. And I'm going to read you Chuck Tingle's bio for those of us who are unfamiliar with Chuck Tingle, and then we'll get into this book, okay?
Okay.
So his author picture, have you guys ever seen his author picture?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just him in a white lab coat with a pink bag over his head and sunglasses in the pink bag that say "Love is Real" on the forehead. And it says, Chuck Tingle is a mysterious force of energy behind sunglasses and a pink mask. He is also an anonymous author of romance, horror, and fantasy. Tingle was born in Home of Truth, Utah, and now splits his time between Billings, Montana, and Los Angeles, California. Tingle writes to prove love is real because love is the most important tool we have when resisting the endless cosmic void. Not everything people say about Tingle is true, but the important parts are. This is a religious horror novel about a gay conversion therapy camp.
Yeah, I mean, I the premise was really what hooked me, but
And
I wanted to read the paperback, but the letters are so small.
are they?
They're a little bit too small for me. Yeah.
Honestly,
So
on the hardcover, the print's kind of tiny compared to other hardcovers that I've read.
yeah. So I was like, oh, I wish that I might get the audiobook, but like I don't want to read I lose focus when the font is tiny.
Yeah. So this is a horror novel about a gay conversion therapy camp. And I don't want to assume, but I feel like pretty much what it is our main character lives in a very Christian religious community. It's like a Christian cult. Like it's like a hardcore Christian cult.
Yep.
And she begins seeing what she believes is a demon in the woods that seems to have a connection to a past she can't remember. And she keeps on being enthralled with this place called Camp Damascus, which is a gay conversion therapy camp that has a 100% success rate. And at the same time, her family and her therapist and her psychiatrist, who are the same person, and her doctor, who's also the same person, are trying to push her to be and date this boy that she's been friends with for a while. But she doesn't feel a romantic interest to him in that way. And it's so fucking good.
Nice.
It's so good. It's honestly, if it can stick the landing, it might be one of the best books I've read all year. Like, no joke. It's a fantastic horror novel.
That sounds awesome.
The voice is like the voice is great. It's confident. There's the prose is fantastic. The characterization is fantastic. There's been some genuinely creepy scenes. Like Chuck Tingle's good. He's got it. He's got it. He also has another horror novel coming out next year called Bury Your Gaze. But Matt, what about you?
Yeah, so let's see. This week I read and finished Owl Goingback's collection, Tribal Screams.
Ooh, how was that?
It's really good. So it's a bunch of I don't know if it's all of his short stories, but it's a lot of short stories from all the like from the 90s. I think 92 to like 99 was the last one. And actually I didn't look to see when this was published. I should have. But anyway, it's a great. So I read Crota and I really loved that. And so I was like, okay, I got to check out some more of his stuff. At StokerCon, he was there, so they were selling a bunch of books. So I picked this one up. And it's great. It's fully in this like almost Twilight Zone-esque type stories where usually there's like somebody bad and then bad things happen to this person. There's a very general idea of all these stories. So there's a lot of stories kind of dealing with, Civil War time and like mostly Southern soldiers and kind of what they did to Native Americans and indigenous people and what kind of bad things can turn around and happen to them. So there's story Spoils of War, where we're following a slave who's been captured by Southern soldiers. And I think it's like almost right after the Civil War, but they're still kind of running around doing their thing. And they come across a village and they disturb this cabin that had like the medicine man's stuff. And this in turn brings in a bunch of Native American spirits that just take over and kill everybody like that. And then there's another story set modern day for the 90s, we'll say, where somebody goes to Anderson, the prison camp, the Anderson prison camp, and they're going to, it's kind of an initiation for a frat, and so they have to spend the night at this most haunted cemetery right next to Anderson. Anyway, it turns out they go into a well, and there's spirits. There's a bunch of skeletons in there, and the skeletons are kind of making this person try to like help dig them out. And so it's just these kind of like Twilight Zone-y stories that they're just a lot of fun. I enjoyed all of everything in here because it was just this kind of fun thing. It's definitely of that time of the 90s, but it captures a bit of, Owl Goingback's heritage and just some of the stories from his tribe and his people. So there's, there's a story about the Fountain of Youth and what that actually does to somebody who maybe isn't a pure of heart. Or there's a story that was a Nebula Award nominee, set kind of during the Vietnam War, and where there was one character, like it was about these two brothers, and one of the brothers is who was the big dance person for the tribe, but he gets drafted. His younger brother is in a wheelchair, and so you're kind of seeing the horrors of Vietnam War, but then it's this really sweet kind of story. After he dies, the brothers, they go to the big fairground, and there's going to be a big dance event, and the brother like gets up out of his wheelchair and he's wearing the full outfit and actually starts dancing, and there's all this stuff. And anyway, it's a very sweet story in here, and so it was just kind of, it's cool to like get get those perspectives and get those types of stories and seeing that kind of history from that. And Owl Goingback's great, so like I definitely recommend reading his stuff and just checking out what he does. He does some really good horror, and he's been around forever. The other story, Rich, you had asked me before that we're recording if I've watched Ahsoka yet, and I haven't, But I did read a Star Wars book, Shadows of the Sith by Adam Christopher. And this is set before Force Awakens. I would say probably like 10 years or so before that. And when you watch all these shows, all the Dave Filoni shows, there's a person I watch on YouTube that kind of goes through them all, and this person on YouTube kind of makes a joke about how all of these shows are just trying to explain The Last Jedi and how Emperor Palpatine could have made a clone. And like when you kind of have that mindset and you watch something like Andor and The Mandalorian and all these things, you kind of like can see that's what they're trying to do, is really explain like, hey, they've been trying to make clones of the Emperor with Jedi powers, Sith powers forever. And you're like, well, were they, or you just kind of randomly put that in the movie? Anyway,
I didn't put that in the movie.
Yeah. So now everyone's having to backtrack and make it happen. And that's the case for this book, to an extent. So we get it. It deals with when Rey's younger. So if you watch Force Awakens, you know that she was dropped off at Jakku, and her parents never came back. Well, this is kind of focused on her parents, who one of them is the direct descendant clone, whatever, of Palpatine. So you have that. Then you have Luke, who is still in the middle of making his Jedi school, and so he's raising Kylo Ren, or Ben, in the book, and you got Lando in this, and he's trying to find his daughter, and anyway, lots of Star Wars stuff. And it's very fun to read. It's very fast, and it's just this neat concept of them trying to find this hunter who's trying to find Rey, and at the same time trying to find a way to that planet that's in Last Jedi, because again, we got to explain away this magic planet that we've never heard of before. And so it's a lot of explaining of all of those things, but it's done really well, except when you get to the end, it sort of drags out. I don't know if this is like a publisher, Star Wars, Disney thing where they're like, all these Star Wars books have to be sort of long, like 400 pages or so. So it could be that, because this book could have been cut in half and still would have been really good. Instead, it's almost 500 pages of stuff, and by the end, you can just feel them just searching for anything to fill in the pages. And it was like, oh, come on. So you flip through a lot of stuff. But besides that, it was fun. It was neat. You do get to see them drop Rey off, and then you get to see what happens to the parents, which is they both die. And so if you're big into Star Wars stuff and you really want to know like how this happened, you could read this Shadows of the Sith. But if you're not, you don't need to read it. And I think that is it for me this week. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've been reading and doing.
And Villame, what about you?
My husband and I, we got around to watching Everything Everywhere all at once.
Yay!
What did you think of that movie?
So fucking good.
I cry every time I watch that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I cried when I was watching it. It was so good. It was so funny. It was so bizarre. It was so weird. It has so much heart. It had so much trauma.
The best multiverse movie of the year.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, it was so good. And I just loved seeing Qui-Gon again. I was so happy to see him. And my husband, he was like, he didn't catch on who it was. And I was like, you don't know who it is? And he's like, no, who is it? I'm like, it's Short Round.
It's like, listen to his voice.
He's also in the Goonies too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think me and him more relate to Short Round, like from Indiana Jones, at least for me. I don't know about him.
I'm a Goonies kid. Short Round's a fun one though.
Yeah. So I was like super happy, and just I loved the fight scenes with him, and I was like, he was amazing.
Yeah. He's been working in Hong Kong cinema for a while doing fight choreography.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, him and Michelle Yeoh, they're both awesome fighters.
Dude, right? Michelle Yeoh was so good in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like her performance, everyone in that movie was amazing. Like everyone gave a great performance.
Yep. It was so good. I just loved it.
You should watch. Oh, go on. Sorry.
I just kept saying like this is the reason it won an Oscar. It deserved every single one of those awards.
Yeah.
The butt plug trophy.
Yeah.
Yes. It was so funny because when we looked at it, Gunnar was like, I think this is going to come in handy at some point in the movie. And then we saw it and he just like called it.
Yes. Yeah, you should watch on Disney Plus American Born Chinese.
Oh, yeah. She's in it too, right?
Yeah, she did it, like the whole crew that did Everything Everywhere All at Once is basically doing this with what's his name, the director of Shang-Chi. So it's like Shang-Chi director, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they did a show. It's
based on a really great graphic novel too.
Yeah. But yeah,
when I worked in China, I used to teach that novel to the first.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. Yeah,
because we were trying to prepare them for like American culture as a Chinese person, but it is great show too.
Yeah, it's awesome because like I watched a trailer and I was like, oh, hey, it's got like half the people from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then they're like, by the director of Shang-Chi, and I was like, holy crap, they just like married them and had this baby.
Nice. Yeah, I need to check that one out.
He's such a joy to watch on screen too. Like you could tell he was having a fun time and Everything Ever All at Once.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and, definitely.
The movie's everything. I love that movie so much.
It's so good.
When there are rocks.
Yes. Oh my God, it was so good.
That I love that. I love that they did that because, like, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty weird, but you know, touching and a cool story. And then when you get to that weird jump and they're the rocks, you're like, all right, cool. They're doing like crazy, absurd stuff in like mainstream cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think they expected this to take off the way it did because it was a kind of a small budget.
Yeah.
Like super. Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, no, it was. Did you also notice the voice cameo for Rakakuni?
I'm not sure, but I was like, yeah, when you say it, I was like, I should know who that voice is.
It was Randy Newman.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's really funny.
Yeah, Randy Newman was the voice of the raccoon. Oh, which kind of fit the whole Ratatouille parody thing with that.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Just everything was so good. I just loved it.
One thing I love about the movie is like, and this is something I've noticed, and then I'll finish. Which is I want to put this a lot of newer media, and this also happens to be the episode I talked about Blood on the Tracks and Boys Abyss. So like, you know, we live in happy media consumption times.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of stories nowadays tend to dive into nihilism and just like embrace nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just look at the world.
Yeah, it's true. Like the world's burning down around us, right? But it felt refreshing to see a movie go into nihilism and then pull itself back out.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah,
like you had because you got that issue of the nihilistic part, and then it had the pull out, and it got to the more bittersweet, optimistic part. Coming to the end of it, it's like a push away against the negativity and nihilism of the world and media that are around us.
Yeah, it just brought balance.
Yeah. And it was so good.
Yeah, I was really happy about it. I also started watching, and it's on YouTube, Hell of a Boss.
I don't know this.
It's a spin-off from the Aspen Hotel.
I don't know that either.
It's an animated show. I can't remember who her name is. Vivian something, I think. And it's just basically about Aspen Hotel has only just one episode at least. There was like a pilot episode, and I don't know if they made more or not. At least I haven't found it on YouTube. And it's about the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, who just feels that you can always find a rainbow within each devil or each demon. and she wants to like have a hotel that will rehabilitate demons and to get them like have a second chance to go up to heaven. And of course, the idea of having that in hell is laughable, and everyone doesn't take her seriously. And she's like, "Okay, fine, I'll just wallow in my hotel then." Like, she hasn't even done anything. And then Alistair, one of the main like overlords of hell, he like knocks on her door, like, "Hey, I'm bored. I want to help you." And she's like, "Huh? Really?" And she's like, "You believe in my project?" He's like, "Oh God, no! This is doomed this at the start, but I'm bored. This might be fun." And Hell of a Boss is a spin-off from like it happens in that universe, but it centers around like an assassination company where demons can go and they employ these like assassins to go to the human world, like go up and assassinate the ones they want revenge on. and it's super fucked up. Like the demons are so funny. The drawings are really good. Like the animation is amazing. It's so good. And I think Hell of a Boss is like being produced by A24.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know, right? So like you can see in the animation like like it's really good, and like the voiceover is really good. There's sometimes like musicals like episodes in this, and like it's not for kids at all. It's like they have to put like a disclaimer like, please do not show this to your kids.
That's funny.
Like it has a lot of sex, drugs, and everything, like, and a lot of language. But it's so much fun. I like it. I try. My husband, he's not that much enthused, but I'm like, I guess I'm more depraved than you.
Have you seen Lackadaisy?
Mm-hmm.
Lackadaisy's amazing.
I've been following her since I was on DeviantArt.
The pilot to the animated show on YouTube is like incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress.
They're gonna have I think the Kickstarter is happening, like it's doing quite well for them, so I'm happy for that.
Yeah,
well, that's good.
So yeah, I finished that, and well, I'm still watching it. They have 2 seasons at the moment, I think. And then I finished Caitlin Marceau's short story collection, A Blackness Absolute.
Nice. How is that?
Oh, how is it?
As much as I love Caitlin's writing, I have to admit I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah.
There were a lot of stories that like kicked off right, but then ended so abruptly that you were like, then what was the point of this thing here? But there were a lot of things that were interesting. Like she brought a lot of Irish like tales into her stories, and one story in particular like had a lot of like Irish food, and I was like, I had to Google it. And I'm like, oh shit, I want to eat this. it sounded really good, even though it was simple as fuck. It was like mashed potatoes and cabbage, and I'm like, I want that. and like a fruit cake dessert or something like that. I was like, yes, please. Can I? Maybe I was hungry when I was reading it. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah.
But for me, I think the best story within the collection was the one that we picked when Ankylo was here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was a great story. Yeah.
Yeah, Gordon.
Yeah.
That for me, I think that was the best story. There was another story about a boy who found like a model ship, like in the park, like in one of the ponds. And when he grabbed it from the pond, he kind of was transferred into the ship. And there were like dead pirates there. They were like, "Are you the one?" And he's like, "What the fuck? No, what do you mean?" And he's like, "You are the one who has to get us out of this curse." And then when he's like grabs the wheel, he just becomes water. And then they're like, Not the one. I like that story. That was a good one. But the rest kind of fell short for me. It's like the endings were like I don't know. They went in a completely different direction that my head had already spun in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the one that had all the tasty Irish dishes, like the simple tasty Irish dishes. It was basically revolved around this girl trying to do like a witchy ritual that she learned from from her grandma, in order to get like the boy that she had a crush on. And like it was really building up to all of that. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be disastrous. Like it's definitely it's gonna backfire on her or something like that. And I was like really prepared to see like what kind of consequences that would be. But apparently she forgot her inhaler. She went close to the bonfire and choked from smoke.
Okay.
And that's it. And I was like, no. That pissed me off. I was like, no, I need conclusion. I need to know what kind of ritual would happen.
That is a pretty funny way to end it, though.
Right?
Yeah.
I was so pissed off. I was like, no, this is the worst story.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, like there were a lot of stories that had a good potential, but like this one, it kind of ended abruptly or just like weird in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed most of it. So I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. So yeah, I mean her writing is good, but yeah, there was most of the stories were like fell flat. They fell flat for me.
Gotcha.
That's it. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think it's time for us to transition to the secrets swept under the rug.
Yeah.
In a
Let's go to
Brazilian
Nazi
village.
land.
God damn it! I was trying to ease us, Vilame.
Nope. Right in there.
No,
Right
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't
you're
even
ripping
drive
the
a truck,
Band-Aid
but
off.
I don't even drive a truck, but I still do that. Balls to the walls, you know?
That's right. Oh my
Just
gosh.
pedal to the metal.
Yep.
Just fucking go. All right. So, what did you guys think about this story?
I don't know. It felt like they realized at the last paragraph that this was supposed to be a scary maybe they were writing a scary story, but they didn't realize it to the last paragraph. And they're like, oh crap, we gotta put, I don't know, dead bodies in here. Okay.
Yeah.
The rest of it, I will say, is fascinating, and I enjoyed it, but the end just sort of like appears, and you're like, wait, why did this happen?
Yeah, it's like it came too abruptly. It like there wasn't enough sprinkled in within the story that like, you know, foreshadowed what was going to happen, you know. It was just just a little bit, but at the same time it wasn't enough to really connect everything together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
It's like we understand like when these people like this is about a mother and daughter who are fleeing from Sao Paulo, Brazil, and going to a little bit south in Brazil.
Yeah.
And do they get the name of the place? Is it Saklong?
I think so. I'm trying to remember.
I think so.
I think that's it.
Yeah, they go to a place like a little town called Saklong that is like really connected to this really big river. And then they get like a little bit of a history from like of the place, which is interesting, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And there's a mausoleum there that apparently stores the founders of the people of the town. And then the mother, who is like surviving or like recovering from cancer, she wants to know more about the place, so she like goes and buys books about the town in the bookstore. And then she starts to get like nightmares about the founder. And somehow it also kind of like creeps into the dreams of the narrator, who is the daughter. And then there comes November, which is like monsoon season, basically, flood season, and there's like a lot of water gathers up in the river, and there just starts to flood, and they flee, and then they see something from the mausoleum.
Yeah.
And yeah, like this is like I'm not the best when it comes to summoning everything up here, but
No, that was pretty good.
but yeah, it was like
that's pretty.
Yeah, so it was like, ha.
Yeah, really the story is just like history of this town, and then we get the dead body Nazi stuff happening at the end.
Yeah.
And they both feel connected and disconnected at the same time.
Yeah, it's really discombobulated.
Yeah.
It's like a huge sleight of hand, which I know we've discussed from other stories, because throughout this whole thing, it's this kind of fear of the river that everybody has, and you get all these like little hints about like, oh, when it floods, and like it's a living thing that just doesn't care about humans and doesn't care about our houses, and it's going to take everything over.
Yeah.
So you're like, cool, there's going to be like some crazy river spirit, or it's going to be like a natural disaster horror story about this flood that's just coming. And then it maybe like 5%
it kind of was
that.
Yeah. And like the river definitely seemed like it had it worked on its own, like it was its own living thing, kind of. But this it didn't do enough to make me fully buy into that.
Yeah. The thing is, like, what made me buy into that would be if the villagers hadn't been so blasé about it.
Yeah.
It's like when she, when they had like a infestation problem like in their apartment, and they got like an exterminator, and she was like kind of worried, like, okay, so should we be worried about something else, like rats, mice or whatever, snakes? And he's like, and the only thing he says is November, and then leaves, and you're like, huh?
What?
I'd be like, I'm not paying you to come back.
Right?
That is not an answer.
Right? And you're like, okay, November, fine. And then you read on into the story, and you know why. But if they knew that this would happen so many times, I mean, yeah, I can imagine that people would be blasé about it. But if the thing with the dead happening every single time, I would not maybe be blasé about it.
I know. That's like, yeah, it's so weird, because one, like, it's funny that you bring up so many times, because I feel like at one point they say it's only been 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
But like you would think like the villagers, because they're sort of accepting. We really don't get very much of what the villagers are like. Maybe they're not that accepting, but like even the aunt that they're kind of staying with,
and she's lived there longer, so I was like, why don't you know about this?
Yeah, you would think, oh, by the way, we have dead bodies that come alive, but they don't attack anybody. They just come alive.
I can't, like, if you want to like go look for rationalization, maybe she didn't want to tell her sister because she's just recovering from cancer. I don't know. But it's like, but this is your story. You can't really put that there.
Oh my god, yeah, it was very, very weird how that happened. And like all the nightmares and stuff, the aunt is just like, oh, that's just your mom, it's fine. She'll get over it. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, to get into like the history thing of it, it's the cons. It looked like it was a little bit of both. So one, it looked like German settlers before World War II times came, and they sort of made like, it's a settler story. So of course they came and they killed everybody and they took over the land and made it theirs.
Yep.
So that's an interesting history thing that I dug. I was like, oh, this is cool to kind of read and learn about this. And like, they weren't prepared for they thought the river was good, but the villagers knew that the river's not good and tried to warn them, and they got killed.
Yeah.
So anyway, that part's interesting, and again, kind of alludes to, the river's bad news for people who come to this town.
Yeah.
And don't know how to deal with it, and like,
and then
or don't respect it,
Yeah, which I was like, yeah, I after reading Owl Goingback's book and some other stuff, that's like part of that kind of history thing and the legends and stuff. I'm like, cool, this is great. And then you get the other side of the German thing, which is a lot of Nazis fled there. But like, I'm trying to think, like, the founder of this town, he technically, because he came before, I assume, so he wasn't really a Nazi. It was the later people.
No. Yeah, it was a later. So,
Okay.
I don't. I mean, it was an interesting tidbit like of history, but again, when you're looking at the whole story, it doesn't connect.
No. Again, you're just
at all.
That's the main issue. Like, I think there are lots of good things about this story, but I just don't think it comes together that well.
No, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, like I agree. Like, this was an interesting story, but like as put together, it was really discombobulated.
Yeah.
Is
this the first time we've all kind of disliked a story together?
No, we didn't like the ceremonies.
Yeah.
Okay, short story.
I mean, yeah. I think it's a short story. Yeah, maybe.
I think so.
This might be.
But it's not like we're bashing it down rather than not really.
Like, there are a lot of good things about this story, and like I do think, even though I personally wasn't a fan of it, I think if history is your thing, I think if settler stories are your thing, if stories about natural and respecting colonialism and nature are your thing, I think it's worth giving it a shot. It might work for you in a way where it didn't work for us, and that's okay.
You know what?
These things happen.
What I think it would pair well with is that L.L. Sorn book we read a while back. Do you remember that one? It wasn't set in Brazil, but it was set.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like he tread that line of history and horror kind of thing. So like, anyway, if you read that, like I thought about that a lot while I was reading this one, because I was like, oh, there's a lot of history in here, which is really cool. And it's just, different history if you've read the L. Sorn book.
I also kind of felt like she could have added more meat on the bone.
Yeah.
Oh, she definitely could have.
Like, definitely, I think that's probably the reason why we feel like this story is a little discombobulated, like disjointed, because there are a lot of things that she could have put that would have made one for one made a lot more sense, connected everything together, and also just give the characters a little bit more a voice.
Yeah.
Because I was being a little bit intrigued by the narrator, like the daughter, especially because he was like saying that he was running away from an abusive husband, like an ex-husband, and I was like,
I don't know if they were running away.
It was a divorce. Yeah, it was probably a divorce, but I was a bit invested in that, because if she had sprinkled a little bit, from her like heartache, or if it was not, it probably wasn't an amicable divorce.
Yeah, it sounded like it was more her. Like, she even says at one point, she's like, I should have known, because the relationship didn't start when I like insulted him on our first meeting or something.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an interesting thing. It was like completely disjointed. That didn't connect at all with the story. But I was like, this is interesting. Give me more.
Yeah, that and like the mom, because the mom was, coming back from cancer. And so it was fascinating with, like you had said earlier, where she's really into reading books about whatever town they're in. It sounds like that's been kind of a thing for her. So like, her getting obsessed with the town and like that person, because she even has a nightmare about the founder. And I think a couple of times, I mean, like you said, we also see the narrator has it too, but it's like, that's a story that would be really interesting. The aunt had because she's helping the tribe and the reservation that's there.
Right? Yeah, that would have been also really interesting to like touch upon.
And it's just, all of, and even like the town itself, because they talk about like obviously the mausoleum, but then talk about like there's this scene in the bookstore where the bookseller was like looking at them. It looking at them weird, and then like
Mhm.
it rained right after they got out, and they're like, oh, the bookseller put a curse on us or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
what is this? I want to know more.
There's there's a lot of
Yeah.
things I feel they could have elaborated on. And I also feel maybe this is also kind of a magical realist story where we're supposed to just accept the absurd parts as part of just
Yeah.
the world.
It might be
But
that.
I
Yeah.
feel like there could have been. I think if I view this as a magical realist story instead of a horror story, it makes more sense actually.
Yeah. Because
So I'm thinking about. I'm gonna sound smart again. I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Because I'm thinking about magical realism. Because when I was in college, and I teach this as well. But it's like just Gabriel Garcia Marquez, magical realism. But the only thing that this doesn't do that's magical realist is a lot of magical realist stories focus on the grotesque.
Yeah.
Like you'll have an absurd magical realist moment, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, a very old man with enormous wings. I don't know if you guys have read that one or not.
No.
It's about this fishing village where an old man with giant wings washes ashore. And a bunch of people think he's an angel. And every time we get the descriptions of him, when he washes ashore, he has been starved. So you can see his bones on his skin. His teeth have fallen out because he has scurvy. And it's describing just the grotesque aspects of his body in like vivid detail, while at the same time, it's kind of beautiful that there's this giant old man with enormous wings.
Yeah.
And like this doesn't have that grotesque element to it in the way that a lot of magical realism does. But at the same time, the other tropes of magical realism work with how this story was written.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, so now it makes more sense to me. Like if I view this as a magical realist story, I definitely have a different opinion about the story.
Yeah, because the horror elements, they're too subtle.
Yeah, I think like if you're reading this as a horror story, it might not work because it's too subtle. It's also we just get the Nazi corpse at the end, and then that's like the big horror element, and then it's done, and it's just like oh. But if we see it as like, but also like in a horror story, these Nazi corpses will be out for like killing the people or whatever, right? Whereas like in this story, they aren't. They just exist.
Yeah, there's
And
like,
and the fact that they exist would work more with magical realism.
Yeah, I could see that because like because there's a couple like things in that again to go with that kind of magical realism where you have them you have whenever they walk by the mausoleum they get cold, and so that kind of freaks them out. And then you have this concept of the founder, when he died he wanted to be buried in German soil, but then I think Brazil brought him back. Like I was trying to figure that out, but
I was trying to figure that out
be
too.
he was like, I'm against this. And I think that was like the curse. That's sort of how we get at the end, is that I guess they come alive and then the flood eats them. It's like I
think it might be connected to like almost also a curse, but I also think like it might have been that the Brazilian government, just like if you committed a crime on Brazilian soil, you'd have to be there even in your death, maybe.
Yeah. Again, that would be, if you were going to expand this, that would be an interesting, make it a little bit longer and let us know, because it's vague. Yeah, it's very vague. And I was just thinking, kind of unrelated to that, but to this concept of them coming and then getting eaten. I had read a while back a book called A Beleaguered City, and this was written back in like the 1800s. It was actually featured in Monster She Wrote. I think it's Miss Oliphant. And so it's this weird ghosty story. But the reason I'm I'm thinking about this with this story is that in the Beleaguered City, it's like this town and they have walls around it, and then one day all the dead come to life, but not to eat anybody. They just come to live in the town, and it sort of pushes all the living people out. And it happens for just like a couple days, and because it's an 1800s story, like they had like a meeting with the dead people, and then eventually they sort of switch it out. But this is kind of like that too, where it's this idea of like the dead are alive, but we're so used to now where like, well, when the dead come alive, they usually want to eat people, but in this case they don't. And in that Beleaguered City, they didn't either. They just sort of are there. And so it's fascinating to kind of think like somebody digging out that old concept and bringing it here, because yeah, they just didn't. They were just there. They just popped up, and then the river just took them away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was also kind of interesting because the one who was driving, what was her name? Sonia, right?
Yeah.
And she just determinedly just almost parked in front of the mausoleum.
Yeah.
And just like, wait, I know there's a river flooding right across it. We might be taken away, but I need to watch this now.
Yeah. And then she left. She was like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah, and then she saw like the river eat them. She's like, "Okay, crisis averted. We can go."
Yeah. Which again leads to like they all know this is a thing that happens, and they just didn't want to tell our two people that are living in town.
Yeah.
Like, be ready. It's a big event. The dead come back to life. It challenges everything we believe in. It's like.
Yeah, and we're like, yeah, but the river eats them, so we fine.
Yeah, so it's just a really weird 5-minute event. We don't even know.
Yeah.
Poor Billy down the street was taking a nap.
It was just too abrupt,
Yeah, it was so fast.
Kind of made me feel like when in Zombieland, when Bill Murray was pretending to be a zombie and he just wanted to like frighten his friends and they shoot him, and I'm like, okay, that was abrupt. or in Supernatural, the one episode when they step into our world and they like, oh crap, we're actors, what the fuck? And then the show's creator, Eric Kripke, he just shows up and he's immediately shot to death. And I was like, okay, that was abrupt.
Yeah. So I guess I give him props for that. To do that.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, I think this is a story that's worth checking out. I think you get something interesting out of it.
Yeah.
And it is a good time. It's pretty quick to read too.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you're looking to read something that, one isn't written by Americans, this is a great opportunity to read something
and see a different perspective.
Yeah.
And you know what else is really good about the Dark magazine, besides the fact that they like to, wow, this really sounds like a promo. We are not.
I know it really does. I was waiting.
We are not promoted, but let me continue. Is that unlike the magazine of fantasy and science fiction?
Oh God, yeah.
The Dark doesn't publish fascists.
Yeah.
Hey.
But I had to. I'm sorry. That sounded way too much like a promo when I was saying that too, and I was like, "Shit, this isn't a promo."
Yeah, I was like,
if they do want a promo, we reach out.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work with you. But Vitlame, are you still taking a social media hiatus?
I am, yeah, but
right.
Yeah, I'm on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Still as Vitlame S. So if people want to chat or something, they can just DM me. I post occasionally, but not that much. And I'm also on Blue Sky as Vitlame Mist. And you can also get in touch with me on my website, vitlamemistauthor.com.
And Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I still float around on Twitter, I guess. My attempts to back away has been slower than it anticipated, but Brandenburg DM. I am on Blue Sky, just my name, Matt Brandenburg. You should be able to find me there.
And I am on Blue Sky under Richard Gerlach, And I still have the Abyss account on Twitter with Add Into Staring. And this is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.